Thanks everyone for joining us on day 2 of learning how to create and mint sellable NFTs, the 3 days MasterCamp that we are having, conducted by the veteran who speaks on cryptocurrency, Jason Fernandes. We have discussed in the first session about the differences between fungible tokens, non-fungible tokens. I really learned immensely, and I'm sure all of you also did, how we're able to see that NFT is a kind of a digital asset that we are using, exploded in popularity in the past 2.5 years. And this is exactly a unique digital signature, which is one of its kind altogether. Fungible, is exchangeable, non-fungible, non-exchangeable altogether. Basically, anyone can view it. However, you are having digital bragging rights altogether, as we were told in the first session, that the buyer has the status of being the official owner of the NFT. NFTs are usually brought with cryptocurrencies like Ether and dollars and other aspects as well. We've covered a couple of concepts related to non-fungible tokens in the first session. It's also been uploaded on our YouTube channel, Masters Union YouTube channel. Feel free to take a look at it and grasp more knowledge in case if you've missed that. I welcome you all on day 2. I'm really looking forward in learning how can we create NFT, and who better than the veteran joining us. Thanks so much for joining us, Jason. So Jason, a speaker, and like I keep on repeating, he is a stalwart in this field, has been a mentor to multiple organizations as well, and is the perfect person who can help us understand how we can create NFTs in a better manner. So I'll let you spearhead. We're really looking forward to day 2 of the MasterCamp. Over to you.
Thanks, Nisha. Cool. So thank you very much for joining. Appreciate Masters Union for putting this on, planning it. This is day 2 of the session. And yeah, let's get started. So the first thing we discussed last time was how to create a MetaMask wallet, and then how to sign up for Rarible. So right now we're going to kind of jump in directly into creating an NFT and uploading it. Let me just share my another window right here. Alrighty, so we're going to go to Rarible. And we'll log in. And this allows us to get started creating our first NFT. So last time when we spoke, one of the things that I asked you guys to get ready was an image that you own the copyright for. So now would be a good time to get that image ready. Meantime, I'm gonna download a couple of images myself. So my parents are artists. This happens to be my father's work right here. They make bronze sculpture. And so what we're going to do here is create an NFT out of this. So I'm going to save this image, call it bronze 1. And then I'm going to save another image, which is going to be, these are my mother's works. So a lot of really soulful pieces right here. So I'm going to save this one, which I believe is called Anticipation.
I think we've lost Jason for a minute. In the meantime, all of you can probably share it in the chat box that what is that unique imprint that all of you have got for the second session. This was your pre-work. In case if you were there, if you joined us on the first day. So can anyone help us probably understand that what kind of unique imprint have you got which will help us to create the NFT? That is the topic of today's major discussion, the masterclass that we're having. Wow. So Manmeet is like the dog's photo. That's amazing. I'm sure that's going to be absolutely unique. Okay. Tane is like my cat's image. That's great. That's really interesting. What about others? What is the unique image that you've got? Probably you're on the verge of becoming. Okay, so Aniket is like the painting. All right. Oh, wow, Tane. These are unique things that all of you have got. That's incredible. I think you've all done some sort of introspection, and then like after that, you've come up with these. Could you also perhaps put it in the chat box? I'm sure after the first session or before that also, when you were probably building your knowledge about non-fungible tokens, what was something which was really unique, like those news headlines? I remember listening to non-fungible tokens last year when the most watched YouTube video was going on auction digitally. So tell us something on those lines. What is that one anecdote that really caught your attention and made you search more about non-fungible tokens? Oh wow, we've got Jason back.
Hello, folks. Sorry about that. I had gotten kicked out for a second. I am
No worries. No worries.
just joining back. Now what I'm going to do is save another image. And this is an image that we will upload onto OpenSea. So we'll do 2 images, create 2 NFTs today. So save that. Now we're going to go to rarible.com. Okay, so all right, so we're now gonna create one. So there's a few options, right? So you can essentially, based off of which wallets you have signed up with, you've added the information for within your MetaMask, you can create essentially on Ethereum. You could also create on the Polygon blockchain, Tezos, or Flow. We're gonna create on Ethereum for now. So there's two different options, right? One is that you can create essentially a series of NFTs. Okay. Yeah, let's try that again. Yeah, so you can create a series of NFTs. This is if you actually want to create multiple NFTs. And this allows you to basically make, so you can make, for example, 15 copies of an NFT. One of the things about non-exclusive NFTs, though, is they're not all going to be worth the same. So it's not like you could take like one image, make 15 of them, and now each of them are selling for the same amount. Rarity is a concept that is definitely part of the decisions that people make when they're looking at whether they want to buy an NFT or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a single NFT right now. So I'm going to choose a file. This is the first one. And so, for example, there's a few options. We can set a fixed price for it, and that allows me to set a price in ETH that I want to charge for this particular piece. Now, the service fee is 1%, which means that they charge both the buyer and the seller 1%. So let's say, for example, I put 100, like let's say I put 1 ETH for this. That means that the service fee is 0.01 ETH, which is 1%. And of course, the person who put this up will receive, which is me in this case, will receive about $1,200 worth of Ethereum. So that's obviously 1 ETH. Another thing I can do, which is interesting, is that I can actually link this, for example, to a high resolution version of this image. So this is really, really important. Oftentimes, the NFT that you buy itself, what's known as a cover, was essentially cover art, isn't actually the NFT itself. So for example, I mean, it isn't the content of the NFT. So for example, in some cases, your NFT might represent a digital key or a key code or some sort of number that's maybe used as, let's say, some sort of membership, as some sort of membership proof of membership to a club, for example. So you need to, you can choose to encode that within this. So for example, I could very clearly put a link, let's say, to a high resolution digital version of this document. But I'll just, for right now, I'll put a link to my parents' website. And this link, for example, will only be unlocked once the owner, but by the final owner. So the person who actually purchases this was only able to look at the details. So this essentially represents private information that is by the that is as a part of the NFT, but that might point to something else. So that brings up an interesting question, which I'm going to touch on a little bit further on in this discussion today itself, and that is the impermanence of file storage. So oftentimes when NFTs first started, people were actually linking them to a Google Drive. So they might be linked to a high resolution image that is stored in a Google Drive. Well, what happens, for example, if the person doesn't pay his Google Drive subscription? and essentially all those NFTs are basically worthless because while they point to a particular file, that actual file no longer exists. So that becomes that's one of those really interesting complex questions that I'm going to start getting into a little bit later in this in this course. So I have a few options. I can create, this is an ERC 721. So ERC 20, ERC 721, these are basically specifications of the Ethereum standard. So they have basically different kinds of information associated with it. So this is the ERC 721 standard, which is a very common NFT standard. Alternatively, I can also create it directly on Rarible's blockchain. In this case, that's what I'm going to do. Rarible is RARI, which is the sort of blockchain. Another thing is I can also choose whether it's a free mint or whether the buyer pays free mint, in which case the buyer pays the gas for minting. Then I can name it, right? So I can name it Thomas Fernandes Ballerina. Oh, actually, I should put it Ballerina number 1. Says so, and then I have to specify what exactly the person is buying. This represents so I have to specify here, for example, whether I'm actually giving the copyright of the piece with the art with this particular NFT, right? So, for example, there are artists that will and by the way, it can vary. So, for example, there are artists that might choose to transfer the copyright along with the sale. There are other artists that might choose to essentially get a commission every time that same piece is sold over and over and over again. There might be others that actually might include the physical artwork as well with the NFT. In which case, I should also mention that this does not include the physical work, right? So you want to specify that as well. Exactly what is the person buying when they're purchasing this? And then I can choose a royalty. So for example, I can make it to where every time, I think 10% sounds about right. Every time this NFT is sold, there's a 10% royalty that goes back to the owner. And I can actually add some. So for example, I can add some additional properties, and this is just additional information related to the sale, this particular NFT. So I can suggest the size of this image, for example. I can also talk about the resolution, and I can also include the text. So for example, I can call this Ballerina number 1, and this is sort of for disabilities to be able to, for people with disabilities. So let's create this. By the way, I hope you're following along and using your own image and minting it. So now in the mint, at the mint point, so this is why I should have probably had. So I obviously haven't put any fees in this MetaMask because this is because I created this MetaMask in public. However, if I did have fees, this would be the point at which they would charge me. Hold on, I'm just trying to try this again. Yeah, so these are all, if you notice, did not require any fees whatsoever. There you go. So there is this NFT. And this is stored on the Ethereum blockchain. So now we're going to create another one on OpenSea. Okay, here we go. So if we're set to log in, pretty standard. So now we're in our account. So these are the current, as I mentioned, OpenSea is like one of the biggest, it's one of the biggest markets for NFTs right now in the world. So you can pretty much find any NFT on OpenSea. OpenSea, so you can actually think of these as like the NFT itself as some as a, you know, as a book in your cupboard. And while you can list that on multiple different places, once it's sold, it automatically can't be bought anywhere else. So think of OpenSea and Rarible more as displaying something that exists in a wallet, as opposed to there is some sort of indelible connection. While for example, while we created this on OpenSea, on Rarible, for example, that token lives in that Ethereum wallet. So I can relist that exact same token on OpenSea as well. But in this case, I'm going to create a new item. And let's just do this again. And I'm going to go back here and choose that file. There we go. So I'm going to call this anticipation. Yeah, there you go. Spelled that right. Okay, and now I'm going to, well, again, this is similar to the other one where we saw we added an external link. In most cases, by the way, this is not going to be a link to the website. It's actually going to be a link to some sort of IPFS file system, decentralized storage solution. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later as well. So let's see. Okay, this NFT does not transfer. And if I had a collection, so for example, you can create a collection of NFTs and then you can add it directly in here. So let's say, for example, you wanted to like have a Bored Ape Yacht Club where you have multiple NFTs in a series, you'd have to drop it in this collection. And now I can actually, you know, add, you know, certain properties, which sort of tell you a bit about like how rare the item is, things like that, which can be important because when people are buying your NFT, they look at things like rarity. They look at the various different traits, particularly with Bored Ape Yacht Club, for example. So it will act. As a matter of fact, I'll show that to you. So, for example, with Bored Ape Yacht Club, excuse me. Okay, so with there's a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT for sale here. I'm gonna go. Let's see where it is. Here we go. So you look at this particular NFT, you can actually you can tell what properties this has. So for example, this tells you that there's a background, which is aquamarine, the clothes, which is 4.1% rarity, eyes being bloodshot is an 8.5% rarity, fur being brown is a 13.7% rarity. The hat being a cowboy hat, again, is a 3.6% rarity. And of course, being bald, unshaven is a 15% rarity. So these are all the various properties that make this particular NFT unique. And it's all stated here, and the rarity is stated there as well. So these are the sort of things that are important. And then, for example, if it has unlockable content, in this case, that we added a link. If it's explicit or censored, this is what you check. And then there's a supply. So people want to know how many of these are out there. Like I mentioned with Rarible, it's not like you can make 10 of these and they're now worth 10 times the price. The rarity is one of the factors to think of. Again, this is on the Ethereum blockchain. And this allows me, again, so by the way, this goes back to the whole decentralized storage thing. This allows me to free my metadata. Freeze the metadata, which means that it will be stored forever on a IPFS system. So now let's go ahead and select the taxis. Alrighty. So now it should offer me the ability to mint this. There we go. And now this shows you. Now this shows you the other NFT, which is now on the internet. So this is how you mint both on Rarible and on OpenSea. OpenSea again is one of the biggest markets. So if you have a mint, that's where you mint. Now this. So next time, the next class we're going to go over is what makes these valuable and what buyers look at when they're actually like choosing to buy it. So that'll give you some more direction in terms of making your own NFT. How do you go about it? What is the strategy that you use in order for your NFT to be remotely useful or desirable for the average person to have, right? So for example, NFTs that are solely based on design, like the two ones that I created, for example, they tend to not hold the same value as ones that have a certain additional utility that they're adding to it besides just the visual aspect of it. Although essentially art is in the eye of the beholder. So people will support your art, they'll buy your art, as long as they like you for the most part. So one of the strategies to get noticed by NFT collectors is joining the Discord groups, joining certain Twitter threads, and essentially marketing yourself the same way you'd market yourself as an artist. By doing it, as an NFT doesn't mean that you wouldn't have to market yourself. So the NFT is like you can think of it as like almost making a file, but that doesn't absolve you from essentially listing the file and making sure that people would want to purchase it. So so that concludes sort of this part of it. But I want to talk about want to go back and talk about some other interesting points that this brought up. So there were some points that I mentioned that come up almost naturally when we really see how this works. So I'm going to go through some points. So I've already went through kind of how to create an NFT on Rarible, how to create and list an NFT on OpenSea, created two of those. Now these are some potential pitfalls for NFTs that I think are really interesting and worth talking about. One is the impermanence of file storage, right? So a lot of like I pointed out earlier, a lot of the early NFTs were pointing essentially to Google Drive location. So, one could do what's called a rug pull by literally deleting the entire Google Drive folder, which means you'd still have those NFTs, but the file that it pointed to, let's say the high resolution information of that file, no longer exists. So what does that mean that NFT is worth? Let's say, for example, you paid $100 to the NFT It's digital, it's scarce, it's clearly the NFT that was linked to that piece of data, right? Now, let's say you take away the actual file that that points out to. Now, how much is that NFT worth? It's still tangible, it can still be sold, but the data that it points to is missing, right? So how do you resolve that? This becomes something that's a huge question. Now, there's, of course, hacks, and finally, copyright issues. But I'm going to jump into some of these more in detail. So this is NFT storage. NFT storage is created as an IPFS solution for IPFS is sort of like decentralized file storage. So imagine Google Drive, but a decentralized version of that. So this allows you to go ahead and store your NFT supposedly permanently, but really, how do you even know how permanent something is? It really depends. But the whole idea of it being decentralized is that it has a good chance at least of being permanent. There's another example of a company called Lighthouse, which is actually based out of India, and they are also doing something similar where they're trying to create the ability to store files permanently. Even in the case of a complete catastrophe, that file will still exist. So that way, if you buy an NFT, you can be sure that even the file it points to, which might actually contain the real data, is also, will also live forever. That's sort of a key question of NFTs going forward is what are you actually buying, right? I mean, are you buying the copyrighted image? In some cases, you might be. Are you buying the right for a high resolution version of that image? Are you buying the right for a physical copy of that image? All these things can be done. So there are physical artists that will actually want to ship their art alongside the NFT to the owner of the NFT. Now that creates an interesting quandary and that again that's a choice of the artist, right? So they could choose to sell the NFT. Each NFT entitles the owner of that NFT to a physical art piece that, let's say, they mail out. But now what happens is that person who gets that separates the two. So for example, let's say he holds on to the physical piece and he sells the NFT on, or let's say he sells the physical piece and he holds on to the NFT. So this starts adding some interesting questions about value and what exactly you're buying and what is the permanence of what you're buying. It's just a really interesting question. Another thing to think about is these NFT hacks. So for example, one of the things about an NFT is it's just really sitting in your wallet, right? And there are malicious sites that are designed that once you connect, for example, your wallet with them, that they'll basically drain your wallet of NFTs. This happens, fairly often. So the Bored Ape Instagram was hacked. They had certain NFTs that were stolen. There were, hackers stole thousands of NFTs from one particular website on Nifty Gateway, for example. And this particular hackers are already stealing NFTs. This person actually lost his NFT that was on Nifty Gateway. So basically, connecting your wallet to malicious addresses can, result in some hacks. And then once that is stolen, the question becomes like, who actually owns it, right? Because really the way this works generally is like there's no the fact that the NFT has moved to another wallet automatically means that wallet has ownership, basically. So this is how it's considered. So now what happens when it comes down to like these stolen NFTs and who's going around and trying to recover them? And it's debatable whether they can even be recovered, even technologically speaking. So that brings up an interesting third point. So for example, copyright. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, one of the really interesting things about the Bored Ape Yacht Club is when you buy the Bored Ape Yacht Club artwork, you actually own a copyright to it. So this is actually like a pretty interesting concept where you own that character and then you can do really anything that you want with that character. So very interesting sort of suggestion is what Seth Rogen did. Yeah. So what you're looking at, actually, let's let it play for a second.
Wow, this is not going the way that
Hey, Gary. Yeah, how are you? Good.
I'll just say, that's who they are, maybe tonight.
I kind of want that rose. Don't take the rose, please.
Taking my break.
What? Oi!
Open up to you. Of course.
Don't do that to your friends.
Put that on somebody who's not being paid.
You're about one TNT away from a screaming match. Now those two are due.
Just have so much love together.
Quadruple whiskey. Coming right up.
Want me to rough them up? I am the only gay guy in my ballet class who can make a fist.
We need a festival. A festival for people who do not depend on anyone.
You never.
Make a fist.
Yeah, so basically, Seth Green, who's a guy from Hollywood, pretty well known guy. What he's done is he purchased a Bored Ape. Actually, he's purchased several Bored Apes, and now that he owns the copyright for them, and he owns essentially that character that's been created, he's put that character in a TV show. And what you just saw is essentially a trailer for that film, let's say a TV show, where one of the title characters are basically NFTs that are owned by Seth Green and people that he probably works with, whatever. So that's an talk about interesting use cases for NFTs. There's literally a TV show. By the way, after the person who posted this, I'm not sure if Seth Green has actually officially released this. This is actually a bootleg copy that this person has apparently tweeted out. That apparently it was shown on a stadium. But interestingly, so what he's done is he shot an entire pilot with his Bored Ape yacht characters as sort of prime characters within this pilot. Now, and again, really, really interesting use case. But now what's happened is those apes have actually been stolen. So somehow he got fished, and this is his little announcement about it there. This is a few weeks ago. These BAYCs were fished and stolen. Now that adds some interesting questions, right? If the person who owns these NFTs has the copyright for these characters now, and it's not him, what happens to his TV show? Well, he no longer owns the characters. He no longer owns the copyright for these characters because somebody else actually owns his NFTs. Now, how they got that is another question. Clearly, he's saying they're stolen, but the whole idea of having something that's decentralized is that there's really no way to get into those discussions. Essentially, if somebody owns the NFT, the assumption is that they, got it and have the right to resell it. And by the way, this is happening to a large extent. And so a lot of situations where people's NFTs have been compromised and those NFTs go on to sell, quite a bit. So this, starts bringing some interesting questions up about copyright, about kind of where the NFT industry is going and things like that. But interestingly, in terms of the key takeaways, I think one of the main points we should focus on is that, creating an NFT is easy and free, depending on, of course, there are ways to make it where it actually costs money, but you can actually do it for free as well. So that's something to look into. The other thing is that a couple of weeks ago we had NFT NYC, which was just massive. And there were actually multiple NFTs on Times Square, including my friend Abhishek Bhaskar, his NFT, where his picture basically showed up on Times Square, which basically shows you kind of where the industry is going, like how mainstream this is becoming. I think about a month ago, Faith Connection launched their NFT and their project Faith Tribe, and they were on a New York billboard in Times Square. By the way, that's IBC. We're able to do that. We're able to get projects on billboards. So if you guys need a project on a billboard in Times Square, definitely get in touch with IBC. But so I mean, it's becoming really mainstream, and I think that in the future, all art to some extent will end up having an NFT component. So even very traditional art, if it's transferred alongside an NFT that represents it, allows you to basically track that ownership and that provenance of that art. And I think ultimately in the future, pretty much all art, even conventional art, is going to come with an associated NFT for people to be able to track that and track the provenance of that. So I think with that, we'll jump into some questions now. Neerja, did you want to highlight some questions or should I just take anyone?
Sure, whichever way works with you, I'm fine with that.
Okay, let's just start with this one. So is this one NFT good? I mean, I don't know. Let's have a look. Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. Why not? I mean, I guess everybody should sort of play around with this, experiment with this, sort of see where it goes. And yeah, don't be afraid to sort of, play around. I guess I'm hoping that you created this while we were speaking. That would just be great. You created this one now. Awesome. So that's great. I mean, somebody is, you've successfully created your first NFT, which is awesome. So we actually listed one on OpenSea right now, I believe. Aniket says listing on OpenSea actually requires ETH. We actually listed this one on OpenSea. So let me just share that with you. Yeah, so we created this without any listing. How do you get buyers? So this is something that I'll talk about next time. There are various ways. It comes down to promotion. So the NFTs, there's some NFT collectors that are like top NFT collectors. You want to look at Twitter, for example. Like a lot of the top NFT collectors are on Twitter. They'll sometimes tell you, hey, shill your NFT, and then people will just paste links to the NFTs, and if they like it, they might end up buying it. The person might end up investing. But basically, the way art works, anyways, is there's a huge sort of focus on. It's not just the work itself. There's also a focus on the artist, and so your work is likely to become more valuable if people believe that as an artist, you're going to mature to the point where your pieces are actually going to be worth something more than they are right now. So one of a really important part about getting buyers is actually sort of creating a persona for yourself, the same way as artists in general in the offline world might create a persona for themselves that has a certain style, a very unique style, for example, and or communicates something special, communicates a style, emotion in a particular way. Pretty much all the rules of art apply. This is just more of a medium to list art. And then, of course, there are a group of people that I focus on NFT collecting specifically. So you do have access to that. However, there does seem to be certain conventions when it comes to NFT art. And the best way to figure that out is you just go to rarible.com. You just take a look at, let's actually take a look at this right now. So a good way to figure out whether an NFT is worth buying is you go to Rarible and you check out what the top collections are. So if you're trending on some of these top collections, that gives you a really good shot at getting buyers. So this particular random project has one untitled NFT. I'm not sure why this is trending because nobody can really look at it. Let's try another one. So this is a trending NFT as well, which is, I'm not sure it's worth one. WETH, by the way, is essentially a representation of Ethereum. So, but there you go. This one edition is not for sale. So I think you really have to look at kind of what's trending. There's actually generally you look at trending may not be actually as good a thing to look at as the top collections. So you look at the top collections. This is one of the top collections, African Beauty. So you can kind of see the variations of that. And these have a very particular style to it. So NFTs have sort of evolved to the point where they have a very particular style. But of course, again, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So whatever, and so is art, right? So whatever the people sort of finds that it speaks to them, they're likely to buy. How do bids work on NFTs? So actually, there's one of the ways. As a matter of fact, let me try to see if I can do that again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create one where you can actually set up an auction. It's already connected to this. I'm not sure. Oh, this is a Rarible test network. Why is that? Okay, I'm not trying to connect to that. Let's go back to the main website. Yeah, so now what I'm going to do is create a single NFT, but with bids. So here you go. This is the other option. I didn't actually get a chance to talk about this, is that you can actually make it to where you're just open for bids. and then people can just bid, and then you can choose to accept it. Then, of course, you have a timed auction. So you have an auction and a starting date, and then and what is the minimum bid, the date that you start. So, for example, you can start immediately, or you can put a specific date, and then you can say how long the auction is going to run for. So 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. And then, of course, you can unlock that content once it's purchased. So only after that person buys it. So, for example, software companies could very conceivably use NFTs to sell licenses. So, for example, they could put the Microsoft Windows logo as their cover art. And then the code inside that's unlocked is, for example, the license code to unlock Windows. How's the percentage of the rarity of NFTs is decided, like 13%, something written on the board at 8 NFT? That really depends on you. If you're creating the NFT, then you determine how rare the individual elements are. So, for example, let's say when we went to that African beauty NFT, you notice that there were various different variations. So the underlying design look the same overall, so the overall facial structure, but then each person has different hair, they might have different accessories, and each of those accessories, based off of how many you generate, they will have a different rarity. And so that is what it comes down to, the person who's actually setting up the NFT. This, by the way, is an answer to Kunal Khatri. It actually depends on the person who's actually setting up the NFT to determine how rare different versions of it are. And by the way, you could very easily do like a stand-up comedy show, for example, that's a video that is only accessible to people who purchase that NFT. So that NFT essentially links to one particular video that is stored on IPFS. So there are so many use cases. And this actually gets into, the really important part. Like, what does your NFT confer? What rights does your NFT confer? If it confers, let's say, rights to listen to a song that hasn't been released yet, it can be the rights to view a movie. You can basically create any sort of pointer, and it allows you to sort of put it in this container as an NFT and then sell it. But the question is, what utility are you selling alongside that NFT? Instead of Ethereum, can we build our own chain for it? Well, it wouldn't make much sense, right? I mean, first of all, there are several, you don't have to do it on Ethereum. There's several other chains, for example, Solana, Tezos. You can build your NFT on Polygon, for example, Ethereum. So it comes down to essentially, like, if you have to move it from Polygon, let's say, to another blockchain, that can be difficult. I mean, unless you use a bridge. Kunal Khatri asked, if I create an NFT for which I don't give any rights to the buyer, what does the NFT signify about what they actually buy? Well, that's a great question. And this is actually something I was alluding to earlier. Well, they're basically just purchasing the NFT, which one can make an argument is of limited utility because it doesn't confer any rights to that buyer. But they still own that NFT, and that's theirs. I mean, they physically own that. However, what that means can mean anything, so that's a really good point to highlight. Yeah, so this is a great question. If I create an NFT in Rarible on Ethereum, would it be available on OpenSea as well? It's not immediately available on OpenSea, but you can list it. Listing an NFT is just like putting it for sale. So, for example, you might list something on OLX, you might sell it on another platform, and then as soon as it's sold, actually, because this is decentralized, as soon as it's sold, it's no longer listed instantly. Whereas in the example I just gave you with OLX, you'd have to actually go take it down from OLX because it was sold on another platform. So that's one of the benefits of decentralization. So again, like I said, you can kind of think of it as a cupboard that you can view from OpenSea or from Rarible, but the token is stored in your cupboard, basically. You're just creating sort of a bridge to it, to view it. So Tane is asking if you can create an NFT in Photoshop. It's basically the same as creating any NFT, any image, basically, and then plus the steps that I just showed. If I have a coin that is 100 or 200 years old and I have 10 or 20 coins, if I made NFTs of it, do I have a copyright issue or not? And I have to give the original coins to the buyer or not? Well, there would not be much use for them to just be able to purchase a copy of the coin, right, and not actually the coin itself. So in some cases, the utility that you add to the token can add up to basically all its value. So for example, if you have a 100, 200-year-old coin, you create an NFT of it and you gave the coin alongside it, then you might have something a buyer might be interested in buying. So you can create anything, you can't force people to buy it. So that's kind of what it comes down to. So Krishna has asked, what is meant by utilities? So it comes down to what are you sharing alongside that NFT? So what does that NFT represent? It can represent a copyright to the work. It can represent the work itself, where somebody actually gives you the work, or it can represent like a membership. So for example, you can sell an NFT that allows you entry into a club. You could sell an NFT that allows you entry into a concert or a conference. These are sort of various different ways to create it. Now, what do buyers do with NFTs? So buyers, they store it in their wallet, right? So a friend of mine, Evan Luther, is famous for saying, NFTs are the new digital flex, and it's kind of true, right? So you might have in your wallet some really, really, really rare NFTs. And that sends a message to anybody that looks in your wallet about your likes, your dislikes. It's no different than having maybe an art gallery in your home, but then publishing all the art that you have in your home, so that you're basically sending a message about the things that matter to you and the things that are important to you by owning various NFTs. That's kind of what you're saying. Yeah, so there's something known as lazy minting. So you can actually set it up to where the buyer actually mints the NFT when they create. So the NFT sort of springs into existence at the time when the person purchases it, basically, and then they're paying for that at that point. So that's just one way to create an NFT. Yeah. So again, Manmeet is explaining how to create a video. So in terms of the verified blue mark, I'm not entirely certain how that works on OpenSea, but basically you can look at also these things like there's Super Rare, for example, which is an invite only place to put out your NFTs. Sort of the more exclusive these marketplaces are, generally the higher price of those NFTs, because those marketplaces are they're actually checking these individual artists. And there's some sort of selection committee that determines who is allowed to list on Rarible. Super Rare, for example. So if you are able to get on Super Rare, that's like a really, really good place to sell your NFTs as well. Krishna is asking, what are we going to do in the third or last session of this bootcamp? We are going to talk about is kind of from a buyer's perspective, what makes it important? What are the things that they look at when they're purchasing an NFT? How do you sort of, make money flipping NFTs, for example? See, I mean, these things are all possible. It gets into some very tricky territory financially. You should definitely not, spend all your money on NFTs and then plan to sell them for higher. I mean, it's probably not going to be a winning strategy, particularly in a down market, in a bear market where we are right now. So I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about kind of like when you're creating your own NFT collection, what are some things that you can do to be more desirable as a creator to people that might want to collect? And so those are the things that you would sort of think about it from a perspective of a buyer and what are they looking at. So those are sort of some of the things that we'll discuss next time.
Thank you so much. I think, again, it was very insightful and a lot of our questions got answered over here. Just like Krishna was saying, we are really looking forward to the third part and seeing the buyer's perspective and completing the entire chain in the process. Any last minute thoughts that you would like to share with everybody who's joined in today?
Yeah, so somebody has asked the last question about, can we earn daily by creating an NFT? I think that's probably a good question to take as sort of a last parting shot. So I don't think you should look at NFTs as sort of a get rich quick scheme. There's really no way to get rich quick ever. Otherwise, that gets filled very, very quickly. NFTs are a great way to get rich slowly and possibly lose money over time if you buy a lot of them. So, and that's been the case, at least for people with Bored Ape Yacht Club. I mean, right now, NFTs, the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs are really down. But if you're good at what you do, if you're good as an artist, then yeah, certainly you can make a living. You can make a living selling NFTs. A friend of mine sold several NFTs very early on and has made tens of thousands of dollars selling NFTs. So yeah, if you're good at it, if you're a good artist, if you have something to offer to the world, there'll be people out there willing to compensate you for that.
Great. Thank you so much. And just like the feedback is coming in, everybody is really happy because there is a major takeaway for all of them. Thank you so much for the incredible session. And we're really looking forward day after tomorrow for our third and the last part of this entire Master Bootcamp on learning about NFTs. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks a ton, Jason, for joining us. We're really looking forward to the third part.
Thank you, Nirja, for having me. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and look forward to having you next time.